Hey guys, welcome to our 2024 real estate market forecast. I am super excited. The man himself, Chris Sorensen, in studio. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, man. You are actually our second speaker in studio. We're doing a hybrid this year.
Yep.
So we've got actually Gary Malice. We'll talk about Gary in a minute.
Okay.
With PRMG, you
Yes.
referred him. He's going to be one of our keynotes, speaking live on May 29th at the Cal Baptist University in Riverside. But I'm excited to get you here because you came last year.
Yep.
And you didn't have enough time because the way I do the forecast, I've got too many people, not enough time. And I left that forecast last year disappointed because I should have chopped off 4 people. We'll leave those people off and given you their time.
You're so sweet. Well, don't be hard on yourself. You had a great event, and it was terrible weather, but first one back after COVID. So good for you.
True. And we actually lost almost 3 years because we did the 2020 we lost, 2021, and then 2022 didn't line up properly.
Right.
So anyway, but at any rate, so you came last year. I just replayed your video, and I forgot how good you were. So I knew I wanted you to come back here in studio, and we can go as long as you want. So anyway, so welcome. First of all, thank you for doing this.
Of course. No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
You're a friend.
Yes. So give us the bio a little bit. I'm very good, horrible at introductions. So how many years in the business?
I'm getting old, Lance.
Long time.
So I started in November of '87 as a real estate agent.
Yep.
Did that for 5 years. From what is it? January '93 is when I switched to being a loan officer.
Okay.
And took to that like fish to water because of coming from my real estate background. You know, the easiest thing when you're talking to a real estate agent, what's your biggest concern? Communication, or lack thereof.
Right.
And so as long as you over communicate, that was half the battle right there.
Right.
So I enjoyed that very much. I ran for election in the city of Norco, became the youngest mayor, council person, and then mayor in my city there.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then anyway, just grew our company. Company, it's no longer in existence now, but we were doing very well. We had a great Southern California concern.
And for those I know the story, but for those of us that have been around a while, that company was?
The Mortgage Guild.
Yes,
Team
it
G
was.
Financial Services.
Yep.
A guy named Kirk Conrad founded the company in '78, and I used them exclusively, became the president, and we grew it, and we had a great run. Long story short, the Great Recession hit.
Yep.
And that knocked me back on my heels. That combined with losing my father that same year in 2008 really had me refocus my career on serving for success as the way I coined it.
Okay.
And I started a nonprofit with the support of Riverside County government called HELP, Homeownership Education Learning Program. And we went out and we helped people decide, can or should I keep my home, or how do I buy a home in this market was kind of the 2 main premises. And on my board of directors was my current CEO, Paul Rozo. And he loved what we were doing, supported it heavily. And he offered me a job, and he said, Chris, put your for-profit hat back on. And
Yep.
I've been there since January of 2011, and we grew it. Now we're one of the top 15 lenders privately held in America.
And Ben, I'm not sure we actually properly introduced you. PRMG.
PRMG.
And the title is?
I have a long one. You ready?
Yes, I have it. I have it here. Okay.
I am the Senior Vice President, Director of National Retail Production.
You got it right this time.
Did I?
No, you left the word out last time. In
I did.
the pre, he didn't even know his title. He left the word out. So
They just call me Chris.
So it's been 13, 14 years?
Yeah, 13 years. I've had 3, basically I say I've had 3 jobs in 35 plus years.
Yep.
So.
Well, I remember Mortgage Guild fondly back in the day. I was, we did loans, I suppose. Don't ask me
sure
when
we
or
did,
where,
yeah,
but I mean,
yeah.
if you were doing business in this market back then, it was impossible not to do business with you and your company.
We were all over.
All over. So I'm glad to have you back. One of the reasons, and I can't even remember, you and I don't know if you even remember this, and I may have a false memory. We were on a panel together somewhere. I think it might have been a Board of Realtors thing. And I remember being 2 or 3 people from you, and I thought I was kind of a big deal at the time. And I instantly thought, wow, I'm going to learn something from this man. Because you mentioned it earlier with the communication. You're very, you have an artful way of communicating, and at least you did with me. You had an impact on me, and that was, I don't even know when that was.
I do recall, I don't remember the details, but I do recall being on a panel with you, and frankly, Mutual Admiration Society thought the same thing of you. So you have a stellar reputation. I think, look at peas in a pod, right?
Yep.
As Pareto said. So I just enjoy working with you, and I think that iron sharpens iron, and you helped me become a better professional.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it's mutual, which ties me into my next cue card, which is data.
Okay.
I think one of the reasons, I don't remember that event, but I remember you talking about numbers and citing numbers, and it was obvious you had studied whatever that data was. And then even today, in preparation for this, I went and I replayed our interview not interview, but the panel discussion we did at the Fox Theater last year. And listen, I'm like, oh yeah, that was good. I jumped on your Facebook page real quick. You're posting something about increasing inventories. So where are you getting that data, and are you obsessed as much as I am with it? Because I'm obsessed.
I used to be more obsessed.
Okay.
I have, especially because things are changing and things are not going exactly as the indicators, in my humble opinion, are revealing that they should go.
Right.
Meaning, I think that we are doing a lot of things. Maybe it's because of election year, maybe, but there's a lot of things that are occurring that make me very uncomfortable. It makes it hard to predict.
Correct.
And so, to a degree, there's an old saying, ignorance is bliss. To a degree, I'm telling myself and others, hey, let's put some blinders on, because we can become so obsessed with what Powell is saying and what the feds are doing or not doing that we forget to go out there and ask for the business and help people create generational wealth.
Correct.
Because it's like, well, the rate, don't become obsessed with the rates. Become obsessed with serving the client and the community at large.
Yeah. I've seen that with me, and again, talk about it being obsessed with Powell. I do these monthly market snapshots, and about 4 months ago, and for probably, frankly, for the last 2.5 years, it's been the Powell show. I have a little piece of Powell. I'm like, oh, he's doing this, he's doing that, and then, we're feeling good. No, we're not feeling good. And heck, 10 days ago, not to get too far into the weeds, but the 10-year bond was at 4.7, and rates were up at almost 8% again, and a month before that, the 10-year bond was below 4, and I'm like, oh my God, everything's great. And I was like, it's an emotional roller coaster. So I said, I can't do it anymore. So let's relax, practice what we preach, because I can get just as wound up as anybody else. So,
you want to know what the good news is?
What's the good news? We'll take it.
The good news is, on a national basis, the affordability index has actually been improving.
Okay.
So in I think it was August of 23, it had gotten, on a national basis, 27% of the median household income had to go toward their housing payment, principal and interest.
Yep.
It's now down to 24%. So we're going in the right direction.
Yep.
And so you have incomes going up, rates are stabilizing, and I think, look, most of us agree that sometime Q4 or Q1, the rates are going to be coming down. And so if you can jump in and buy a home, if you're in a position to buy a home, my goodness, it makes so much more sense to buy a home today, if you can, and refinance to a lower rate down the road.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be competing with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's going to come out of the woodwork. And the pent-up demand is there for sure. The numbers don't lie.
Have you seen obviously on the loan application side, I've come up with the conclusion, I think the consumer is just kind of settled in. And to the degree that they're even paying attention, but to the degree that they are, maybe a year or so ago, rates up. Oh, honey, we're just not. And now it's like, hey, it's been north of 6, it's been north of 7. We want to buy the house. We need to buy the house. We're growing out of the house. Something's going on. It just seems as though the demand is certainly there. We're still getting multiple offers on pretty much everything.
And it's going to become even more. We're on pace to do about 4.1 million homes nationally. We should be doing 5 million is what the normal number is. So there's a lot of pent-up demand. And I think just there are folks that are sitting on the sidelines, and there's a herd mentality in everything that we do. And so people are going to wait. Sadly, I'm looking at you now. Don't be one of those people. If you're in a position to buy now. Otherwise, the 2 or 3 offers that you're getting on the listing today will become 7 to 10 offers tomorrow. And tomorrow's not too far away.
Well, it's ironic, because I've been saying this, back when rates were at 2.5%, 3%, I'd be at sales meetings, and anybody I could talk to, scream into the camera, buy a house. Oh, but the market's going to crash. And I'm like, I don't know if the market's going to crash. I don't think the market's going to crash. But the interest rates are sub 3%. Who cares? Buy the house. It's basically free money. And a lot of people, unfortunately, did not listen to that, because there's always this crowd of doomsayers. And it breaks my heart, because there's a lot of friends of mine that could have and should have bought a property at a sub 3% that didn't. And now here we are again. Oh, I missed the opportunity. Okay, well, you missed that opportunity, but you could buy a house today.
Lance, everybody's an expert. What happens is that in order to get clickbait, right, it's either boom or zoom or doom and gloom.
Right.
And doom and gloom actually sells more than boom and zoom does, frankly. And so there are a lot of naysayers out there. And that's the reason why, number one, I think professionals need to keep their blinders on. And even for the constituency, I know that you've got folks from the government watching this, and those folks should encourage you and your team, put your blinders on and go out there and serve the constituency at large, because we need to get those folks into homes.
Right.
Homeowners make, if they're more stable employees, their children, studies reveal, end up having higher test scores. The higher percentage of homeownership in any given neighborhood, the lower the crime. And for over 92% of Americans, is where their wealth is created.
Correct.
And so for all those reasons and more, we want to promote homeownership, don't we? That's
Well,
why
we
you're doing
do.
this forecast, God
Well, we
bless
do.
you.
I'm a little conflicted because I'm also a business guy and we do property management. So it's like, okay, property management business is wonderful. We love the property management business. But then at the same time, we've become a majority renter state. And I can't remember, I've got the charts and the data, but you could see city by city by city. Okay, wow, now 51% of the people in this city are renters. 51% of the people in this city are renters. And it wasn't that way that long ago. And
so the local number, I'd mentioned earlier in this conversation about the national number being 24% of the median income going towards housing, principal and interest payment alone. Yep. In the West, the average price is $600,000, and so that number is actually 34% in the West.
Correct.
So by the time you throw in taxes, insurance, and HOA, the number's getting up there to, for some, an uncomfortable position. Now, my goodness, if the rates drop down like we all are predicting they will, and we're very comfortable that's going to happen, the question becomes, I don't want to get into the technicals. We'll leave that for Gary Malice, our Chief Strategy Officer, to talk about the technicals, because when you find out you're in a recession, it's always in the rearview mirror, isn't it?
Yep.
But yeah, I would say that it's a little more challenging in the West than it is in other parts of the country. But still, if somebody needs to beg, borrow, or steal, there's no greater way to generate wealth. 90% of the globe, the millionaires around the globe, 90% of them all created their wealth through real estate.
real estate, right. Yeah, it does. Again, just real quick to put a button on that rental thing, though. It just, again, I have mixed feelings about it because we do property management, and I've been saying within our team as well, geez, a good portion of our future of my business is property management. We've been doing real estate. I'm always going to do real estate. That's my thing. But it's just interesting. We're going to have a couple California Assembly people speaking live at our event. We've got Bill Essley. I got to work on Bill's name. Assemblyman, 63rd District. He's actually my guy.
Okay.
I live in Canyon Crest and Riverside. He's my assembly person. And Greg Wallace is down in the low desert, Palm Desert area.
Nice.
Two young Republicans, early mid-30s, obviously more conservative in a very blue supermajority legislature.
Right.
But we're talking about housing, and we're having this rental conversation. And Bill said something as simple as, geez, if instead of building all these apartment buildings, what if we just took a few of those apartment buildings and turned them into condos? And just have an ownership issue. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds like a pretty simple solution.
Right.
What do we have to do to make that happen? What do we do to make that happen? We're not building enough housing. We're building rental housing, I suppose.
We are,
So-
and look, when it comes to, you have a lot of investors that follow you as well, and that are going to be part of this forecast. And so the investors, they will obviously want to put more doors up. And so I understand it. Look, it's inevitable. We have such a large population. We got to put these people someplace. So higher density is something that cities struggle with. Everybody is in the NIMBY, not in my backyard, but it's going to happen. And for managing those single-family residences that your property management company does, look, you've got a lot of investors who are looking to find those properties as well, those diamonds in the rough to be able to get cash flow. So, look, for all the right reasons, this forecast is a huge benefit to your audience from every facet that's coming to see this thing. So, I applaud what you've been doing.
And I want to thank you. We mentioned his name 2, maybe 3 times. I don't know we've done the full introduction. So Gary Malice, he's a brand new speaker to our forecast, which is nice.
Yeah.
So I was talking to you a month or so ago, and you're like, hey, you might want to consider Gary. Tell us who he is, what he does, and what the relationship is.
So Gary Malice, Gary, if you're watching this, I love you. So Gary, I'd reached out to him after talking to you, and I said, Gary, would you be willing to speak? I'm a huge fan of Gary. Gary is somebody who, I didn't know him when he had founded and was running First Magnus, but First Magnus Corporation, for those that don't know, was the largest privately held mortgage banking firm in the United States up until the Great Recession. Countrywide, it went off the cliff and took a lot of us with them.
Right.
And so they were just a phenomenal organization. Well, he was one of the founders. He's a brilliant tactician. He is a savant when it comes to all things capital markets. and he's humorous. He's self-deprecating, but he's able to put the technical jargon into such a manner that even the layperson can understand what he's communicating. So I love him. He hosts our national capital markets call once a month, and I had just heard him, and I thought, man, this guy is so good at his delivery that when you and I were speaking, I'm like, hey, would you be interested? He's a guy for you. Yeah. So I'm glad it worked out.
It's right in our niche. It's what we do.
He's a partner at PRMG. We have our founders, and then you have a couple of partners, he and KP, Kevin Perenio. But Gary just brings a certain savoir-faire when it comes to all things capital markets and secondary, which is perfect for this forecast.
So you were saying a minute or so ago that, at least what I thought I heard you say is, we're expecting rates to come down a little bit. I'm assuming Gary's looking at some numbers that say, a lot of people are looking at numbers. We've all been kind of saying we're going to see rates come down a little bit.
Right.
So is that, not to preempt Gary, but is that kind of what you guys are feeling?
The short answer is yes. And hope springs eternal. I mean, in our business model in the mortgage banking world, if you can have additional refinance activity, that's always good for our organization.
Right.
Purchase money is great. That's 92% of our business. But when we can maybe move that down to 82% and pick up additional refinances, makes for good business. And plus it just spurs economic activity. People don't refinance simply for lower, what we call rate and term.
Yep.
They pull cash out to do home improvements, which spurs the local economy. So that's always a good thing. Debt consolidation, et cetera. So we're hoping, I guess, how about this? I'll just speak for myself. I'm hoping that it'll happen before the election. It may not. We may go into Q1.
Right.
A lot will depend on the next couple of months and what we see. We're seeing, and again, I don't want to get over my skis here, but we're seeing rents finally start to ease. So we're seeing some rents. We're seeing unemployment tick up to 3.7. So,
isn't that great? A higher unemployment number. It's almost good news, bad news is good news. I mean, it's like,
okay, so the Fed, obviously it's inverse, right? So the Fed, if you and I were Jerome Powell, would we want to spur the economy right now? Would we want to lower rates? Probably not. You have a strong, overall, it appears a strong economy. You have a strong stock market, and you have housing doing relatively well. We're still appreciating, obviously. Just had a very large gain, as I said, from Black Knight and CoreLogic. Just reported a 1.2% gain over the month, so that's huge.
Yep.
And on an annual basis, you're looking a little over 5% by both of their...
which is healthy. I mean...
Very healthy. Right? I mean, where else can you leverage in the West $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $800,000, $800,000 and get 4 or 5% on your money?
Yep.
It's a pretty good deal.
Well, again, we can't have these 20% appreciation year-over-year numbers. I mean, it felt good at the time, but all of us who are paying attention were like, oh boy, okay, this is unsustainable. This is going to be a problem. And actually, part of our challenge, I think, that we've been going through the last couple of years is just this drunken, appreciation period. 40% appreciation during COVID.
Well, because rates did drop so low, we had plenty of equity, people pulling equity out of their home and then buying investment properties, okay, and Airbnb communities, and so you saw a ton of that. And what we did is we accelerated maybe 4 or 5 years worth of business into 2.5 years. Yep. And so we're just feeling that pain. Yeah. The pig's more than halfway through the snake. So I mean, we're in a good position.
I don't want to lose this question. I wanted to ask you 45 seconds ago. Okay. Chris Thornburg's going to come out. Generally speaking, it's funny, you said all indicators, most part, for the economy is solid. He pretty much says the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. It's funny because there's this recession talk again, and I don't know that Chris has modified his forecast, but the last time I saw him, which was not that long ago, he's still saying no recession. And he's been saying that for several years. And he's got that joke, a certain percentage of every economist, there's always a recession coming within 2 years, and it's like, okay,
you're going to be right eventually.
Where it is, or where's it at? But the point he was making, different point, is he shared a chart with me, and it's right in your wheelhouse, I think. So if I'm blindsiding you, I apologize.
That's okay.
We've got this, what do we call that thing, where the homeowners they're like rate locked, okay? Because you got a gigantic percentage of homeowners with mortgage rates at or below 3%, okay? And it's like, it makes sense, and there's some charts that bear that out. So, okay, well, why am I going to sell? I'm not going to sell. I don't want to trade it in. But he shared something with me a few months ago that indicated that that's not necessarily true anymore. That number seems to be shifting. Which to me sounds like people have been doing some cash out refis, or there has been a certain number of people that say, yeah, I got a low rate, but I got to move. Something's happened. So it seems as though that rate lock phenomenon is maybe not quite as what it was a year ago. So do you have data on that?
I don't have anecdotal only. I don't have that. I don't have numbers to provide you, but I can tell you anecdotally. I would tell you that people are still locked in mentally, and by the numbers, the majority are still obviously in a rate that's below 4%.
Okay.
So by the numbers, that's the case. I don't have the numbers memorized. I apologize of what the most recent numbers are. But here's what I would tell you: when you look at the average car payment now approaching $800 or more, and you look at the over $1 trillion in credit card debt, and then you look at the student loan debt, who knows what's going to happen with that, right? We'll see.
Well, what student loan debt?
Right, exactly.
Is there student loan debt? We don't have any student loan debt.
Yeah, just
wave your hand and.
Yeah, I better not get started. I'll get scolded.
Well, that's why you're here. Right. I'm going to get them started. Honest to God, before you go off of that, I just heard the number could be as high as $1 trillion of student loan debt that's just gone.
I can't even imagine, as much as he may want to do that, he being Biden want to do that, and one could argue that it's buying votes, obviously, from a certain segment of the population. It's just going to get tied up in court. I mean, the Supreme Court has already told him no, and so he's trying to do a workaround. But yeah, gosh, here's what I will say. On principle, I just have a difficult time, like so many do, of, hey, maybe my kid didn't go to school, they got a job instead, and now they're having to pay for your kid that went to school.
Right.
Maybe didn't even graduate, but has student loan debt, and all of a sudden they've got to carry that burden.
I'll make it more personal. I mean, Drake, my oldest son, he doesn't have any student loan debt. You know why? Because I paid all of it.
Right.
I mean, all of it. So, where's my refund?
Right.
Yeah. So
you don't get one.
We digress.
Right.
All right.
Where were you talking about?
I don't even know. We just got wound up. That's why I'm like, hey, we could do a whole other show on politics and how we're going to save all the world's problems.
100%.
Well, I don't know where we were, but I have Barry Habib's name written down here. And I know you're close to Barry.
Well, okay, so let's use that as a segue, because Barry, and on a personal level, I want to say something about Barry as well, but Barry has a company. Barry Habib, for those that don't know, owns a company called MBS Highway. He's also the producer of Rock of Ages, best-selling author, Money in the Streets, just a great human being. In his system, MBS Highway, he has a tool called the Debt Consolidation Tool. And we are seeing a lot of those borrowers who, that's where we're going with the student debt and the credit card debt and the car payments. You may be locked in at a 2.75, 3.5%, 4% rate. But if your blended rate is 10, 11, 12%, because credit card companies keep raising your interest rate to 22, 23, 24%.
Right.
At some point, they're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. On a cash flow basis, you can take somebody's overall debt, do a debt consolidation loan because equity is plentiful.
Right.
And all of a sudden, on a cash flow basis, they could be saving $500, $800, $1,000 a month.
Right. And they'll trade in a 3% or 3.5% mortgage for.
Well, here's where it gets kind of fun. If they take that same cash flow, because they say, well, I'm okay. I don't like the debt, my payment going to that credit card or to that car payment, but I show them, and you can show this on this calculator, if you took the exact same cash flow and applied it to your new mortgage, your effective rate will be at or below what you're currently at right now anyway by accelerating your mortgage.
Right.
So financially, it makes perfect sense.
Well, but you need somebody to run those numbers. Like you say, you need Barry's calculator. You need to plug it in. And for a lot of people, I mean, heck, I was just talking to Adam, and my wife just bought a car, and mortgage rates, vehicle loans now are, 7.5%, 8%. But it's the same old nonsense. You roll in there, and if you don't know what you're looking at, somebody walks out with a 23% interest rate on a car payment for 7 years.
Right, scary.
Then it's paying $70,000 for a $30,000, Nissan, whatever.
All right.
So yeah, it's interesting. So getting on the refi stuff. So obviously, when on the mortgage side, what's a healthy purchase money loan to refi market for you? Where would you love that percentage to be, just from an overall volume perspective?
Okay, so historically, the lowest we ever, as a company, and again, we do business in 49 states plus the District of Columbia. So, and we kind of measure ourselves against the top 50 lenders in America.
Yep.
IMBs, independent mortgage banking firms, like we are. And I would tell you that we're not too dissimilar from them in that we are typically running 90% plus of purchase money. Currently. Okay. And at peak, we maybe got down to 70%.
Okay.
So still very high, but that extra, 20% of refinance activity was huge, right?
That keeps the doors open. And
it's just, there was a huge surge in business. You got to remember, the average, typically we're running as a nation about $1.7, $1.8 trillion in mortgage volume. During 2020 and 2021, we were running 4.2 to 4.3 trillion.
Yep.
So as I said, we just accelerated a ton of business, and
Right.
what we're feeling is that effect right now.
Right.
I would just say that if we get to about a 82% purchase money, I think that's going to be where I believe the industry is comfortable.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the question differently. And again, we may be getting. We talked earlier about who's our audience, and are we going to get into an
Too
area
technical for
well,
some?
Our audience might be you and I. You might be the only one who watched the next 5 minutes of this. So,
That's true.
so from an industry perspective,
Yeah.
I've been saying for a while. Again, it's funny because I'm paraphrasing, but you in effect say the real estate market's okay, and it is. So if I own a piece of property and I want to gauge okay by where's my property values, and am I holding my own? Am I going up 1%, 2%, 5%? Okay, healthy. We had that little bit of a pullback 18 months ago when rates kind of spiked. Everybody kind of freaked out a little bit, and we pulled back, and then we backfilled all that in 6 months.
Exactly.
So if the definition of a healthy real estate market is values are somewhat stable, let's just stop right there. Fine. Now we're good. Well, okay, let's identify some unhealthiness. Well, there's just still not enough inventory. So if you're a buyer, it's still a struggle, even
Right.
at higher interest rates. But from an industry standpoint, and that's where I want to bring it back to us.
Okay.
Let's be selfish here for a moment. The industry, as a broker, owner, or agent, at some point in time, we can talk about the prices are good and the buyers are okay and the sellers are happy, but are we selling enough homes? Are we generating enough mortgages? The volume that you just talked about.
And revenue, obviously, to keep the lights on.
Well, correct. And again, I don't know. I don't even want to pretend to know what margins are required to operate a mortgage company because I don't know. I honestly don't. But I do know what margins are required to own and operate a real estate office. And when you have volume down anywhere from 30 to 40% transaction volume, well, that's a problem.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody's, pulling in their horns and cutting expenses and maybe reducing servicing or square footage on buildings, whatever it happens to be. So you do what you can to, hey, we've been through it before. We're going to ride through. So on the mortgage side, and I think you gave me the number, and I didn't digest it fast enough. So what percentage of the actual volume of business are you down from this accelerated peak?
Yeah, so we're down. I'm just trying to think of the most recent numbers that I looked at. So, from peak, we're probably down as a company or an industry?
Well, industry.
Okay, let's just talk industry. Again, 1.8 trillion is a typical market. We went up to 4.2 trillion.
Which was, so that was
we're
bananas.
half.
Okay.
We're half as a national industry for the mortgage-backed security market.
Okay.
That's how much volume has been sucked
So
out.
the 1.8 trillion number now, is that normal, or is that where we are?
That's normal. That's
Okay.
relatively speaking normal. 1.7, 2.3. We're actually having, from a historical perspective, a very strong market.
Right.
But when you have so many people coming into the industry, both from a sales side as well as from a fulfillment side,
Right.
and now you have a vacuum sound of people being sucked out of the industry to be able to right-size the ship, financially speaking.
Yep.
That's the challenge.
And are you talking, when you say vacuum, are you talking loan officers or
loan
support
officers
staff?
and both, right? Because if you just don't have the volume, obviously everybody's staffed up. It became a feeding frenzy during COVID where people were stealing everybody else's staff because the volume was there. You just couldn't get the laundry out.
Right.
Those people are now finding themselves, sadly, regrettably, on the unemployment line or having to find work elsewhere. We're seeing a lot of that.
I know, maybe they're candidates to go work with you guys, but I know some quality loan officers that have moved more than once in the last 24 months.
Well, and some of it has to do with their companies shutting down.
Correct.
There are, look at the MBA, Mortgage Bankers Association.
Yep.
They report, and these are rough numbers, but roughly 32% of their membership made any money in 23.
32% made money.
Yes.
Okay.
So what's that tell you? The inverse.
So 68%
Lost money.
And
when companies
now when they say their membership, they're talking companies.
Yes.
So 68% of mortgage companies were in the red last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of the losses are staggering.
Right.
No company is immune. Everybody was losing money, and they had to obviously right-size their ship and get their FP or their fundings per employee count to the right place.
Right.
To be profitable, that's just the bottom line. And the cost to manufacture alone has only gone up.
Right.
credit report fees as of January 1, 2024, darn near doubled. I mean, the bureaus have a monopoly, for goodness sakes, and I hope I'm not going to get any TransUnion coming and knocking on my door. But yeah, some of the things that industry is doing, especially in this marketplace, seems egregious.
Yeah.
But that's just one, cog in the wheel, right? Where just everything's costing more and more. And so what ends up happening is you're seeing a lot of folks like us in the space having to lay off staff, to your point, get rid of space, and simply run lean and mean in order to survive and thrive.
Yep.
Now look, I mean, this isn't about our company, but we happen to be in the catbird seat. We've always been a company that has been conservative in so much as nobody, from an ownership perspective, lives beyond their means.
Right.
During the heyday, people were living and spending money like drunken sailors, buying jets and everything else under the sun. That's not who we are.
Right.
So
well, that's how you survive these things.
and we're and there's a lot of great companies. According to the Stratmar Group, we're hearing stories of upwards of 60 companies, large national players that are looking to find a soft landing because they just can't sustain themselves.
Right. Well, again, that 68% number, honestly,
It's staggering.
Well, it is staggering, but I don't think it's any different than the brokerage, the mortgage, or not the real estate
estate side
brokerage.
of the brokerage,
I would suggest that number, if it's measurable at all, is higher than that. A lot of companies will say, even myself included, might say, well, I don't fall into that category because I do property management and I have escrow and those are ancillary services. We're not talking about that.
Right.
We're talking about, does your real estate operation actually pay for itself? And anyway, different conversation. We're going to have to come back and do a longer interview on that.
I would like to, because that's an interesting topic, and we could probably help a lot of your peers and mine.
Yeah. Okay, so since we're here, this is a nice segue. You and I have talked. We haven't done anything yet, but something tells me we need to. You guys, I don't know if it's a new model for you, but what are you calling your?
So what's interesting, Lance, and I think thank you for bringing this up. I think it's important from an industry perspective, and also it plays right into the Setzer-Burnett case and the NAR settlement and what's happening. There's a lot of confusion from the consumer side of things as well as from the professional side of both sides of the fence, right? The real estate agent as well as the loan officers. There's been this historical notion that, and it's true, don't be a jack of all trades and master of none.
Right.
And if you're a real estate agent, stay in your lane, be a real estate agent. If you're a loan officer, stay in your lane, be a loan officer. The challenge has become that the tech giants, now Homes.com, Redfin, Zillow, Realtor.com, they are creating a one-stop shopping experience for the consumer. Whoever gets to the client first wins. Whoever controls the lead controls it all. And so those tech giants are creating a one-stop shop. Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure.
Including mortgage.
Correct. All of it. And so in December 15th, 2022, FHA, HUD came out with a mortgagee letter which stipulated that their long-standing position of you cannot be duly employed and be the real estate agent and a loan officer in the same transaction, they modified their position and said you now can, so long as you're not a decision maker on the loan. All right, fast forward to answer that, because you could always do this if this was a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, but FHA said no, and so we just always kind of took a hands-off approach as a company. But now what we're seeing is that a lot of folks are asking, saying, hey, I want to be able to maybe not be the loan officer, but what if I do want to I'm working for Lance, I want to get licensed, I want to be able to co-originate with an expert, get involved and create a better buyer-borrower experience. And so if somebody has the best of intentions, it can be a very good thing. Now there's guardrails, you have to get licensed, depending, which I don't want to get into the weeds here because I don't want to lose your audience, but there are both positions that are licensed and positions that are not licensed to be able to participate. But a lot of it just has to do with, look, if you're going out there and you're sourcing a client and you're educating that client on the whole process, including the mortgage process, and then you continue to communicate with them and keep them abreast, that's a commissionable exercise. So why wouldn't I invest my dollars into somebody who's...
Well, it seems like you have to. And again, this isn't new. I've been solicited for a decade about doing a JV here and a JV there. But I think it's just an indication where our business is. Again, we do escrow. We're a DRE regulated escrow. It's a significant part of my ability to own and operate the company. We do property management. It's the same thing. We never had a mortgage relationship. you guys on the lending side are like, hey, we're in a new world. And it's funny because you mentioned Citra Burnett and NAR settlement. Wow. I didn't know. We might talk about that before I read. I wasn't even going to bring that up with you. Obviously, I mean, just the fact that you can name the parties in the suit, we probably have something to say on that. You mentioned Zillow, Homes.com. Homes.com is CoStar. CoStar's coming, baby.
Yeah,
CoStar
$1
is
billion in marketing.
They're coming, and their target is, I don't even know what they give two rips about Realtor.com. They're coming after Zillow,
right?
And they want it all, just like Zillow does. We're doing some stuff with Zillow. And we have mortgage relationships. Well, guess what Zillow has now? Zillow Home Loans.
Yep.
And if depending upon what your relationship is with Zillow, flex programs and all these other things, they're working hard.
Yep.
To push everything to Zillow Home Loans. And I'm assuming does Homes.com or CoStar, do they have that relationship yet, or?
I don't think they have that quite yet. But that's where the industry is going. Is that if you look, if you want to create, as Walt Disney said, people spend money when and where they feel good.
Right.
And before we started recording, you had made a very astute comment. You said that the sharp agents that bring massive value to the consumer have nothing to worry about.
Yep, that'll be fine.
I mean, it's still going to be, there'll be some changes. There'll be a little bit of an educational process and striking that norm, that balance.
Yep.
Who I feel sorry for are those agents that were just kind of part-time, kind of playing at the business. Those folks aren't going to make it.
They're not. But they've never really made it. They've just hung around.
But there were so many of them that they had an impact. Yeah. And so I think that for those folks that are professional, the 80-20, Pareto taught us the 80-20 rule.
Yep.
In our industry, if you go to any board of realtors around the nation and ask what percentage of your members do what percentage of the business, it's a 90-10 rule.
Yeah, 95-5 for me. I'm with you. But
okay. So the point of fact is that the cream's going to rise to the top. And what's going to happen is those top agents are going to say, wait a minute, I'm having to pay more and more to be able to source that client. And then from my side of the fence, I look at it as a good business person. And I say, I need to be setting aside, as any good business person does, a certain percentage of my earnings for my future growth of my business.
Yep.
I can go out and I can buy a bench ad, I can buy a radio ad, or I can actually go and invest in somebody who's already proven to me that they can source business and convert that business.
Right.
Why wouldn't I invest in that person or entity?
Right.
And so then the guardrails come up of, all right, how do we make sure that the consumer gets the very best that the real estate agent has to offer and the very best that the mortgage professional has to offer? That's where management comes in.
Right. But that's the future, though. I mean, that's going to be, and I hope the future isn't solely in the hands of Zillow and Zillow Home Loans and CoStar or Homes.com and what ultimately will be Homes.com Mortgage. And it's just interesting. I mean, we're in such our industry is in such a change, but I truly believe what you just said and I've said and we've said multiple times over decades is if you're a great agent, if you're a great operator, heck, how long we've been doing this? We're basically the same person. I've been through some bad markets. You've been through some bad markets. I look at Moreno Valley, not that I'm touting or blowing my own horn. I am the last office still continuously operating in the city of Moreno Valley from when my dad and I opened the company in 1988.
Wow.
There was, I don't know, 3 or 4 Century 21s come or gone. Remax is still there, different ownership. A couple Better Homes and Gardens, a couple Prudentials, a couple, every brand you can think of. Come, gone, and here I am. I'm still going. I don't know that I'm any smarter than the rest of those guys, but I got no backup plan, so I go to work and I just keep on going.
That's what I told you earlier. I just have to put my blinders on. And,
right.
My dad always taught me there's no substitute for hard work. So if you can work hard as well as adapt to the marketplace and use today's technology, if you simply just look at what the best of the best, the Homestars, the Redfin Zillows are doing, and then mirror their actions on a micro level.
Yep.
Guerrilla warfare tactics work. It's what founded this down country, right? We're able to beat Great Britain by guerrilla warfare tactics. So use that in your own business and be uber aggressive if you want to succeed. You could put me in the middle of Paducah, Kentucky, and within 90 to 120 days, I'm going to have 7-8 listings, and I'm going to be cranking.
You're going to figure it out.
I'm going to go knock on doors and promote open houses. I'm going to get boots to the ground and make things occur.
Right.
That's
stuff that works.
Because people are out there buying and selling, and you're going to allow them to go on the internet. They're going to do that anyway, or you can make sure that they know that you're also here. And by the way, today's technology, today's tech stack in our space, both yours and mine, man, it gives us the ability again, in our local area specifically, to
Yep.
be able to compete with the homes.com.
100%.
And so here's what I would say is sad, is that there's a lot of real estate agents and loan officers who are getting up there in age, and they're very resistant to change.
Yeah, well, that's
and
a problem.
so they won't spend the time to learn how to use the tech stack that the younger people have created for us to make our lives easier.
Yeah, but if you marry the two, because some of those older guys, they may be a little averse to the tech stack, but they're not averse to picking up the phone call, drop them in, they can do it. And then
Yes.
you've got the reverse of that. You got some of the younger kids or young adults that are crushing it technology-wise, but it's like, okay, well, at some point you do got to pick up the phone. And we've been saying that
If we can mix the two, that's...
bring the two together.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to do this, but we kind of segued into it. You mentioned Stitcher Burnett and the NAR settlement. So we've kind of had the conversation, but I want to be a little more specific. And then we'll see what sort of prediction you may or may
Sure.
not have on where
Yeah.
we're going to go, and we'll wrap it up.
I have plenty of thoughts on that.
So with the NAR settlement, and I guess we're getting closer. There's some dates that have come in. I thought it was going to be June, July. Now there's a new date of around August 17th where
Right.
things seem to be happening. I'm going to have Art Carter and Ed Zorn in studio, or maybe even live at the Forecast. Art's the CEO of CRMLS. Ed Zorn's chief legal counsel. They're about as connected on really what's going on. I mean, they're
Right.
like in the room with the attorneys and the DOJ, which is a whole other thing. Why is the DOJ doing this? What's
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
we could go 2 hours on this. So we got some changes coming. The good, great agents will be fine. We'll figure it out. Some others will struggle. What's MBA doing? What are you guys doing so that we can figure out, okay, we're going to have to figure out a way to shift this compensation or the concessions so that a seller can assist a buyer to get the real estate agent paid. Has the lending industry figured that out yet, or are we still
Well, the
working on it?
FHFA, right, we're still in, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we're still in conservatorship, obviously, from 2008, where we
It's been
created
that
the
long.
Federal Housing Finance Authority, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah,
but
Fannie and Freddie
they're never going to they're never going to give up FHFA because the money's going straight to the Treasury. And so why is U.S. government going to ever
Right.
let Fannie and Freddie be alone and be private again?
Never again.
I don't think so. But
Yeah.
back on point, so FHFA has come out and they've said, yeah, we're not going to count the agent's commission as part of the 3 or 6% concession allowed,
Correct.
whether you put 5 or 10% or
Correct.
more
And
down.
that came out, what, 2 weeks ago or something
Correct.
like that? Yeah.
So that's where we're standing today, which is business as usual. And then in my humble opinion, I think what's going to happen based on everything I've read, and I've had guest speakers obviously that have come on to speak to our group, people that were quoted in Housing Wire, et cetera. And we're all saying, it seems like everybody's saying the same thing. Number one, when the dust settles,
Yep.
while you can't put the compensation in the MLS,
It'll be gone.
there's nothing to stop you from having your own website that
Yep.
lists the compensation for that particular property. And so it just might mean that I pivot where I go in the MLS to find a home and then I go to your website to actually to find the compensation and then I reach out and talk.
The dust is already settling, and I've been following this for 2-3 years. And then a year ago, I thought it was happening, and then in December, I thought it was happening, and now it sounds like it's going to be happening. It'll be fun, but they're already doing this in the Northwest. The Seattle, whatever the MLS is up there, Seattle, Washington, Oregon, they stripped this out 2 years ago. They've been operating under this model for 2 years. I'm friends with some Coldwell Banker agents up there and the brokers, and we kind of had a panic attack for a few months. We figured it out, and materially, nothing's changed.
So let me ask your opinion, because way back when I was a real estate agent, back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was taught early on in my career, hey, if you're tired of taking people out and being their Uber driver,
Yep.
showing them homes, they light up a cigarette in your car, you're missing a kid's soccer game or
Yep.
baseball game, and then they go and they buy from somebody else.
Right.
It'll drive you crazy.
Right.
Once that happens to you once or twice, you say, I'm going to have them execute a buyer-broker agreement so I know that they're contractually obligated to pay me.
Correct.
And even if I'm not going to enforce it, I think it raises the level of my professionalism
Yep.
and of mutual respect.
Well, that's been...
We did that back in the 80s. So
Well, we did, but because it wasn't an industry standard thing, and this is going to sound horrible, but a significant percentage of the agents were weak, and they couldn't articulate that. And hey, Mr. Sorensen, this is why you need to do that, and this is what my value is, and maybe a few people could do it, but no one was doing it, so it became unnecessary. But this is the deal. You may be aware of this. This happened 3 months ago. Before this really started to get legs. I mean, we had the settlement back in November, but California Association of Realtors in February is sponsoring legislation to mandate buyer-broker agreements in the state of California.
Okay.
Which, they're not completely ahead of the settlement, but they pretty much said, okay, we're going to throw up the red flag or the white flag. We're going to just do it. So
Right.
that's happening. That's going to happen. Now, the settlement basically, in effect, says that anyway. So if we had not mandated it at the end of the day, it's like you're going to have some sort of a relationship with this buyer in order to get paid. To me, I'm like, let's just get there sooner rather than later. And and again, not that I'm looking to the state to tell me how to do business, but if the state was to snap their fingers now, mandate buyer-broker agreements today, so at least every agent is under the same playing field.
Correct.
Every consumer. So now it's like, hey, I need you to get this going. Now, I might not be able to articulate my value as good as the 95% or the 5% killer over there, but at least we're all operating under the same thing. I think it'll just become commonplace. It'll be normal. We're already seeing this. We're seeing this. I've been playing with it. I'm actually doing production. I don't know what that says. It might say that Lance maybe needs to go into production to pay the light bill.
Well,
I've been taking listings.
Listen, there's a whole cottage industry that people like yourself that are doing it. Here's one of the things I do is, being self-effacing. I always ask myself, if I can do it, how do I communicate effectively so my team can do it as well?
Right.
You know how to get an agreement executed. And so you take a chance, you take one of these videos that you do, do a role play, and then have your people do the same thing. I mean, I think we do need to raise the bar so those agents that work for you and work for the industry are able to articulate their value proposition more effectively.
Well, and they've got to do it now because the consumers know what's going on. I mean, I was in the dentist like 2 months ago.
Isn't it amazing how much
And my
they
dentist is asking me, I got stuff in my mouth, and my dentist is hey, what's going on with this commission stuff? And what's going on? I'm like, okay, this is different. This is different.
Yeah.
And it's not just the dentist. People are talking about it. So, okay, so let's do this. Predictions. I think you kind of already said on the mortgage rate side. So everything you're looking at, improvement, fourth quarter, first quarter next year?
That's my prediction, yes.
And volume, in turn?
Volume, I think we'll kick it up, probably 2.3, 2.4 for 25.
Okay.
So increased volume. Our biggest challenge has been we just can't get enough homes built.
Right.
Right. And it's interesting too, usually new homes are about 10 to 12% of any given market's inventory.
Yep.
Now we're at 25 to 27%, in some cases 30%.
Right.
And in the Inland Empire, I think there's like 11,000 improved lots ready to be built.
Ready to go.
Yeah, so we need those homes to be built. I do think we're going to see a lot of ADUs being built as well. You're going to see more and more people pulling some equity out and actually planting an ADU on their property.
Yeah, I don't know what that does to. I mean, I get it, and that's not new. There's a lot of interesting things going on with that. It almost kind of ties back into that rental market thing I was talking about. There's actually legislation that would allow you. Don't even tell me how this works in real life, because it doesn't. We're going to do a lot split, and we're going to let you sell off your ADU as a separate parcel. Think about that. Think about that.
Well, and think about it from my perspective.
By the way, that ain't
lender.
happening. I mean, they're talking about it, though, but that's not happening.
Think about what you just did to my asset. The underlying asset from the mortgage-backed security market, you're going to destroy the mortgage-backed security market. Oh. And that's something I would love for, what? It's interesting that I'm going to ask Gary to comment on that when he speaks, because that is something that's being talked about, and we actually have a small builder that's doing a project in the IEL to say, and that's something that they're trying to get done. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the world, if you sold an asset that has a 10,000 square foot lot and a 2,500 square foot home, and now you want to take the land that my asset sits on and divide it, well, my asset is no longer the asset. And so when you have the state teachers retirement system or the California Public Employee retirement system, they've invested in mortgage-backed securities for a certain ROI, and now you're going to hurt their underlying asset? I
was in Sacramento last week having this discussion, listening to this discussion for 2 hours, and I'm like, what, how are you doing this? Even if the property was free and clear, okay? And I'm going to got to do a lot split. They're talking about creating homeowners associations. Really? I'm going to have a homeowners association on my 123 Main Street and 123 Main Street and a half? I don't know. It ain't happening. Yeah. It's not happening.
Crazy things have occurred.
It is. It's crazy things, crazy times. Okay, so this is the deal. First of all, thank you, Chris.
Of course.
I appreciate you. So Chris Sorensen, PRMG Mortgage, and everything that goes behind with it, we're going to get together. I think we should do a podcast. We do a weekly podcast. We got all sorts of content.
But we could bring in political guests. And
that's what I was thinking.
And we can grill the city managers.
We could do the whole 9 yards. The whole 9 yards. So anyway, I want to thank Chris for coming in. And again, we've got Gary Malice.
Gary Malice.
He's speaking live on May 29th.
You don't want to miss him.
Don't miss him.
Really good.
Chris Thornburg still keynoting, but but we're gonna have like a dual keynote, and Gary will come on, Chris will close us. So I'm super excited to see him.
Yeah.
So again, thank you, man.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you, my friend.
We'll see you guys May 29th, 2024 Real Estate Market Forecast at the, I'm not even sure what building it is in. It's at the Business Center at Cal Baptist University. We'll get all the information. Click the links below. Thanks.